Hello, welcome to the India Research Center podcast. India is a civilizational state with a rich history and heritage. With me to discuss India's civilizational diplomacy is Dr. Arvind Gupta, Director of Vivekananda International Foundation. Sir, thank you for coming for this podcast. First of all, sir, I want to ask you about your career. Tell us more about certain highlights of your career as a diplomat and as an intellectual who has contributed significantly to the Indian growth story.
So presently I am director of Vivekananda International Foundation. That's my career after I left the government service in 2017. Before that I was a diplomat. I've served in several countries, and a large part of my career was spent in National Security Council Secretariat when it was set up in 1999. So since 1999 to 2017, I spent 11 years in the National Security Council Secretariat in 2 stints. In between, I also headed the IDSA, the Institute for Defense Studies and Analysis. So a lot of my career has been spent on issues of national security, foreign policy, international relations, and so on.
Nice to hear that, sir. Sir, as I mentioned that India is a civilizational state and you are an intellectual and expert who has been, promoting that knowledge, making people aware about Indian knowledge systems and other things. I want to ask you, how important is the civilizational narrative in diplomacy?
Civilizational narrative in diplomacy is becoming increasingly important. Not that it was not there earlier, but at that point of time, we used to look at essentially cultural linkages. So in our public diplomacy, we had cultural ties, cultural agreements with many countries in which we exchanged, some cuisine, some dance, drama, occasionally languages, etc. But it was not seen as a part of strategy. It was seen more as a means to improve one's image, and that's it. But now I think if you look at the last, say, 10, 15 years, many countries in the world, particularly those who have long history and culture, they are beginning to project themselves as civilizational states. Notable among these being Russia, China, Turkey, Iran, and India. So civilizational state or civilizational state narrative essentially means that a country which is a nation state now, but because of its long history and culture, it obviously had long contacts with the outside world. So today when the world is changing and today the world order is changing, so countries are looking for new narratives to position themselves as important states in the new world order. So they are beginning to dig deep into their history and pick up ideas which suit them. And now they are treating it as a civilizational state, as a asset. So it's like an asset like economic, military and other assets. Civilization also becomes your asset. So it helps you engage with the world, but also reclaim your history in other parts of the world, and also use that as a basis for enhancing your influence, but also establishing linkages with those countries who are within your cultural footprint. So take the case of India, for instance. India had a huge civilizational footprint in Southeast Asia, for instance. Some years ago, the government of India came up with a project Mausam, in which they wanted to establish linkages with the Southeast Asian countries, Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, Singapore, Malaya, and so on. And using the civilizational linkages that we have had with them, at least from 3rd century BC, I am told. So there is a lot that needs to be done in this. Project Mausam was one such attempt. Then Prime Minister Modi, he has also given a new dimension to it. And within the policies of Sagar and now Mahasagar, he has tried to reclaim India's maritime linkages, whether with the Arab world or world of Africa, the Gulf, or in Southeast Asia. And today, Indian Ocean is so important for India's security and economic prosperity. And so many countries, we have had the links with them. So I think in the civilizational concept, civilization state concept, these maritime linkages also will play an important role. And then I think another effort is to project India as a contributor to world thought and culture. You see, India was never seen as an aggressor country, not had colonized any part of outside India except for Raja Ram Chola and when some influences, Tamil influences went to Southeast Asia. But by and large, Indian influences spread through ideas, through trade, whether it was Buddhism, for instance, or trade. We have been trading long time, even including with the Roman Samrajya. So India was always known for its ideas. So that is our image, and I think that stands us in a very good stead today, because today the world is looking for non-aggressive, non-threatening, but yet powerful ideas. So Vasudev Kutumbakam, which is a part of our civilizational ethos and consciousness, is one such idea which is emerging out of Indian civilizational consciousness. So such ideas are now strengthening India's claim as a civilizational state.
Sir, I have a question. We talk about India as a Vishwa Guru, and then there's also an idea of Vishwa Bandhu Bharat. So, what do you think? What road should we take? Go towards trying to be a Vishwa Guru, or try to be a Vishwa Bandhu, or balance between both, or try to be both?
See, in geopolitics, terms and terminologies are also very important. When we talked about ourselves as Vishwa Gurus, people like Vivekananda, they were saying that India was contributor of ideas. At that time, he was telling the world that there is this Indian civilization. He was India's ambassador to the West about, so he talked about Vishwaguru. And of course, we were colonies at that time. And there was a lot of these missionary ideas which are floating and missionary activities in India. So it was necessary to project. But in today's context, I think we have to be a little careful because the ideas can be misunderstood. The soft power is a double-edged sword. It can connect and it can also disrupt because people can mistake it. So I think we should be careful with our terminologies. Vishwa Guru can be misunderstood as one big pole or as an imperial power or something. So we have to be careful. Whereas Vishwabandhu is that we are friends to all, everybody is our friend, etc. So we have to be a little careful. So I would go for Vishwabandhu and Vishwa Guru only in the sense of ideas and not otherwise. So we should not be misunderstood. We have to be very careful.
Sir, one of the Maharajas of this dynasty that ruled Gwalior, the Scindia dynasty, the Maratha dynasty, Jivaji Rao, I was reading that during one of the Ganesh Utsavs, he invited many scholars to come and give lectures at his palace. So he invited people like Dr. Balkrishna Shivrao Munje, Rabindranath Tagore, and people of Madan Mohan Malviya ji and like nature. So basically during that time period, many of these rulers, and particularly Maratha rulers, were interested in promoting this kind of a discourse where lectures like these were organized. So how do you see that, what is the role and how can the think tanks in today make a difference? Like these wandering and traveling scholars were making before, during the time of the princely states and the Maharajas and before 1947.
No, this is a great idea, and I think it should be followed up. And you, as the Scindia Research Center, and doing that, I know you have called several people here for lectures, etc. These are excellent interactions, and these should be continued because India is so big, India is so diverse, and India is also so culturally united. And we have so much to learn about ourselves. So I think this discourse should certainly happen. We should know the different aspects of our culture on from different regions in different time frames. And this will only enrich India as a civilization. So I think it's a very great idea. And I thank you for inviting me and also compliment you for making such.
So even in the case of the Vivekananda International Foundation, I want you to know that what are certain dream projects that you have, things that you think that VIF will be able to make a difference when it comes to India in the Amrit Kal.
So we have right from the beginning projected India as a civilization state. So while we study geopolitics, we study national politics, we study economics and many technology and so many other things, but back of our mind is India as a civilization and nation first. So these are the ideas which guide us. So within that, we are studying, as I said, we have deep discussions on India's national security challenges. And also we look at the Indian civilization and culture and try to link. So we are not experts only on culture or civilization, but we are trying to see how the civilizational ideas impinge on today's policies and particularly geopolitics, and how we can enhance India's capabilities and image. So that is, I think, one area which probably we have slightly different approach than many other think tanks.
So it's after all Vivekananda International Foundation, so it makes a lot of sense to bring in Swami Vivekananda in the discussion also. In an age where there's a lot of polarization, we talk about clash of civilizations and all. Swami Vivekananda talked about the idea of unity in diversity. He said that all the different, and his guru also talked about it, that all the different paths, religious paths, lead to one final God. So may it be Ramakrishna Paramhansa, may it be Swami Vivekananda, or later many important scholars, intellectuals, and sadhus, they have talked about this unity in diversity. But today's age is very polarized, where leaders are emerging in different parts of the world that believe in their own supremacy and the supremacy of their own people. So how do you think that we'll be able to deal with this kind of polarization in today's world, using the ideology of Swami Vivekananda?
So Swami Vivekananda, as you said, he came from the Vedantic idea of unity, Atma with Paramatma and Brahma, and unity and many paths to the same truth. So these are the very ideas which can save the world. There is great regard for diversity. Diversity is to be respected. But once we understand that there is unity in diversity, then this Tutumai will stop. So this is, I think, what Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is also saying. So I think in order to deal with this extreme polarization that is happening in the world, we have to get back to these ideas which unite us. That is why in the G20 conference in 2023, Prime Minister Modi, which was held in India, Delhi, Prime Minister Modi made Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, one Earth, one family, one future, as the overarching theme of the conference. The idea was to tell that idea of oneness. And where is that idea of oneness coming from? It's not invented. It's right in our genes. Yes. So I think once people begin to realize that they have a very rich heritage which respected diversity and there was unity, then I think people will. So it's a question of really talking about this, telling our young generation that what great heritage that they have. And it was really the balance between materialism and spiritualism. That is what we are all trained in. So once people begin to realize, so they'll bring those values and we'll be able to handle these differences. Differences have always been there. I mean, wars have always been there. But differences can be overcome. Oh. And I think you mentioned about one of our unique projects. We do this Hindu-Buddhist Samvad, which we have been doing since 2015. And this was launched by Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Abe, Japan, former Prime Minister Abe. And we have done several iterations. I think the fifth one we did, or was it the fourth one? We did it in Thailand in February. So we get the Hindu Dharma Gurus, Hindu scholars, Buddhist Dharma Gurus, Buddhist scholars, and they discuss world's problems today. And the overarching theme of these samvads is conflict avoidance, not resolution, conflict avoidance and environmental consciousness. The two key issues of the world today. And when we meet, and these people who are scholars in there, they find that there's so many ideas which today have to be brought in order to end this rift and conflict that is there in the world.
Precaution is better than cure. Conflict avoidance. Yes. So also, it's very interesting what you mentioned, the samvad between Hinduism and Buddhism. If those who have studied Indian history must be aware about Samrat Ashok and his edicts and his respect for both the Brahmanas and the Shramanas of both the Vedic tradition and the Buddhist tradition. Maybe That is what the VIF is trying to take forward, the vision of the great Ashoka, where two different Indic thought processes and the religions come together and discuss how we can avoid conflict. And again, as I said, precaution is better than cure. So, in your life, when was the first time you read about Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj?
Oh, that was obviously during our childhood, but just about read it. The nuances and the details were not known. And this whole concept of Hinduvi Swaraj actually is quite new to me. Right? It was there much before. We thought that the Hind Swaraj or Swaraj idea was Tilak's idea and it came during, but it is much older. So Shivaji's, now I'm reading these days and been visiting here also. So this is a great idea. I mean, that idea of Hind Swaraj, which and the whole empire that was built by the Marathas, is something that we should be proud of, and we should be really propagating. And also, there's many other aspects. The foundation of the Indian Navy, for instance, the importance of the Durgas, these are forts, the importance of guerrilla warfare, and I think they have this Agya Patras,
Yes.
in which how do you rule as a just king. Now, all these ideas transport you back to Kautilya, the Arthashastra, and there is some kind of a continuity. So I think the Indian mindset, and he brought, he was fighting the Mughals and also the European powers at that time, and later on the Marathas had to fight the British, etc. So our whole history was being made at that point of time. So ideas of Swaraj are so important, and you see, there is also this. This is of course territorially, but there is also this K.C. Bhattacharya. He talks about ideas, Swaraj in ideas. That is what we now should be aiming for.
Decolonization of Indian thought process.
Absolutely, absolutely. And he wrote this essay in the 30s. ठीक है, स्वराज तो मिल जाएगा आपको, लेकिन आपका स्वराज in ideas, and that is what now we are talking about Atmanirbharta. We are talking about so many ideas, Swadeshi ideas. Now these ideas have to taking rebirth in a 21st century context. But the solidity of the ideas, the force of ideas still remains. And today, when we go for the 2047 Viksit Bharat goal, unless you have a Swaraj in technology, unless you have Swaraj in thinking, in economy, etc., you will not be able to, there's a danger that you may fall into another kind of colonialism or imperialism, because the technology companies have become so strong. So we have to study these ideas and see how they are applicable today. So this is what we try to do in the VIF.
Indeed, it's a wonderful thing that you are doing, sir. So you have been the representative of the largest democracy on the planet to two very big civilizational states that you yourself mentioned before, Russia and Turkey. So I want to understand that these two states have had a history of conflict amongst each other.
Yeah.
In the past, I mean, Russians claim to be the protectors of the Orthodox people of the Ottoman Empire, and the Turks wanted to, go as far as possible in Europe to end up conquering Rome, it is said. So there was this clash of civilizations between both these powers, and you basically served in both the powers that were one of the major players in the civilizational conflict of that particular region. And then, as the head of the VIF, I'm sure you must have discussed and read more about this whole idea of the rising China. So how do you see India's relationship with these three countries, the different civilizational states?
See, there are 190 countries in the world, and everybody has a national interest, a territory, a population, and a political system. And they will all work to protect their national interests. So I think we also have to work in the same way. Now, when you come to these India and these three countries, the fact remains, as Samuel Huntington wrote, that there is a possibility of clash of civilizations. And in the past, these civilizations have clashed. The Christianity has clashed with Islam, they continue to do so. The Russians also, they clashed with the Ottoman, and but in geopolitics, there are always alliances which happen. People change sides because it's a chess game that you have to play. But if you remain rooted in your basic ideas, and basic identity remains your civilization. So that defines your behavior. But that doesn't mean that you're always fighting. Sometimes you have to fight, sometimes you have to make peace, sometimes you have to do alliances, sometimes you have to work. And today, in the age of technology and so on, all these, the borders are also sometimes meaningless. So we have to learn the art of geopolitics, but we should remain rooted in our own ideas. That is the way we have to do, and it's the task of diplomacy that do it as much as possible without fighting, because wars are to be avoided, but wars become inevitable also. So war and peace are the two sides of the same coin. But to avoid wars is obviously preferable. Even Chanakya says that war is the last option. Before that, and this is what happened in Mahabharata also. Krishna, war was the last option. Ashoka, in fact, first came the war and then came the peace. Then he became peaceful. First, he had a Kalinga war in which 100,000 people or more than that were killed. So he had a change of heart after fighting the war. Whereas in Mahabharata, they were trying to avoid war to the last moment. So they never glorified war. So we have to remain rooted. Once you are rooted in your civilization, then you will see war and peace, use of force, use of dharma. These are ideas, they will define your diplomacy and help you to deal with this very complicated world, and sometimes probably not always successfully.
So, sir, what is your opinion? Is at the moment, understanding the present geopolitical situation, is it the time for India to pick up the Gandiv or turn from Kalashoka or Chandashoka to Dhammashoka? Should we go the peace way or should we go with the more hawkish way? What kind of policy that
देखिए
you
ऐसा
have?
है, पहले बात तो आप अपना स्ट्रेंथ जो है वो बना के रखिए, एंड द स्ट्रेंथ इज एज इन दी 7 प्रकृतिज ऑफ द स्टेट डिफाइंड बाय चाणक्य. उसमें आपका किंग से लेकर और एलआई तक 7 things which includes kosha, treasury, etc. So you have a comprehensive national. And then once you have the power, you see, if you have no power, as Vivekananda said, if you are weak, you are dead. वो तो है. So weakness means death. So never be weak. So that means build your power. But once you have the power, then you use your concept of dharma. See how the power has to be used. So there is no dichotomy. There is no dichotomy between the two. So you have to build your power. Pandavas built their power. They got all the shastras. They were ready. They knew the war was coming. तो 14 साल जो उनका वनवास रहा, उसमें उन्होंने अपने पावर बनाया. So and the Chinese did the same thing. They were building the power. They were hiding their strength and biding their time. That's a very good approach. So I think India has to build a power of the material power, which is the economic power and so on, and also the power of ideas. So once you reach that thing where you can influence the world with your ideas, so deterrence has to be built. So my point is, you have to build your Gandiv for deterrence. Without Gandiv, there is no deterrence. Without deterrence, there is the soft power is useless. That's why Joseph Nye talks about the smart power. So I think there is no dichotomy. You have to build your both powers.
Sir, you know that India has a very youthful population. We have a demographic dividend. It's a wonderful country with great talent. How do you see the technological journey of India and this whole idea of brain drain, that intellectuals and great technical minds and scientists from India leaving and going to the West, to United States or Anglo-Saxon countries or Western countries, and settling over there and developing those countries and innovating there, rather than taking education from this country and going and building those countries? What is your opinion about it? What is the solution for it, or how do you see things will be in the coming future?
I think in the next 20 years, when we become Viksit Bharat, it will be based on technology. And not only technology, but technology sovereignty. On strategic technologies, you have to have your own technologies. Nobody is going to give you technologies. Now with all this transition to clean energy, etc., which is all essentially technology. Fossil fuels to clean energy is technology. But if you don't have technology, you will be basing your progress on somebody else's technology, which means you will become slaves to them. So in the technology journey, it's not just having having technology, but your own technology, which means R&D. So one simple way to do is to increase your R&D expenditure. The vast science and tech ecosystem that we have, which is totally fragmented right now. यहाँ थोड़ा सा इधर है, थोड़ा सा इधर है, वो सबको इकट्ठा करके एक पूरा टेक पावर में आपको लाना है. Now government has taken some research and development innovation fund, 100,000 crore rupees have been given, etc. So we should use this to really collect and gather all that is scattered here. Bring all and that link between the government, the industry, and the academia, that has to be like this. We have to obviously take steps to achieve in economic growth in different sectors, create jobs, high-tech jobs, and stop this brain drain. Brain drain is a negative factor for India. It has to be stopped, but that cannot be stopped unless you create jobs here, high-skilled jobs, etc. So several efforts are being done, and it is a whole of society approach. You have to improve your education. Education means you have to improve your education. The most important thing is the primary education. If 50% of children are not finishing primary, or they don't have literacy or numeracy, then how are you going to become a tech power? So you have to start from there, and that brings in so many other issues. Why primary education, what state it is in, and so on. So new education policy is trying to do something, but I think there's still issues there of implementation and so on. So there's a lot of work that needs to be right from education to R&D, and then of course the whole ecosystem building. Here again, some missions are going to be very important, like the aerospace mission. If you have an aerospace mission, because today the wars are all aerospace, include that cyber, quantum. So you have at least 10, 15 big science and technology missions. They should all be brought together. This will lead to economic growth. This will lead to so many improvement of ecosystem. That is the way to go. But otherwise, simply buying technology and sending our children, and they make billion dollar companies into $1 trillion companies, but all multinationals. That is not the way we will suit us.
So, as the director of Vivekananda International Foundation, do you have any message for the youngsters of Central India?
Yesterday, I interacted with some of them, and Vivekananda came to my mind. Be strong, believe in yourself, and never be weak. Weakness is debilitating. Once you have a belief in yourself, you can do anything.
Thank you very much, sir, for joining us.
Namaskar.